How did I start investing while I had bad debt? I didn't start investing until I was 40. I got laid off from law enforcement. I tried for a pension a couple of times. The Marine Corps downsized after Desert Storm. Law enforcement downsized after the 2008 housing crash, because when cities aren't making tax revenue, they don't have money for cops. So I got laid off with a bunch of other qualified officers at the same time and decided to make my own pension. I also went through a divorce and found out about a lot of bad debt in my name I didn't know existed until the divorce. I started teaching at a CDL school making $17 an hour, so I wasn't in a great position. So how do you start? Sometimes I get comments on my content where people say, "Why do you make content? Nobody can listen because it's too hard to start." I understand, it is hard to start. I had a lot of bad debt. I wasn't making a lot of money, and I was raising 3 kids, but I wanted to start. So step 1, I needed to calculate how much debt I had, because I didn't know about it till the divorce. So I started calling everybody that sent a collection letter to us or a bill to us and saying, "Who are you? What do I owe you? How do I pay you?" And I came up with $313,000 that I didn't know about. And so, step 2, stop creating more bad debt. So for me, that was stay single. For you, it might be come up with a budget. Look at what you're spending, figure out what is a need and what was a want, and put your needs first and your wants off until your assets can pay for it. So step 3, and this is the one you might learn from my story, I didn't end up having to pay back $313,000 in bad debt that I didn't know about. I contacted one of the lenders and I was trying to figure out, who are you? How do I pay you? And luckily, they asked me a question that changed my life. She said, "Your ex filed for bankruptcy. Do you plan on doing the same?" And I almost answered, I'm thinking maybe I'll get back into law enforcement. So I'm not going to do bankruptcy because that's a curricular for a cop. But before I even spoke, she said, "Because if you're considering bankruptcy, we'll take 20% of what you owe." A little light bulb came on, so I contacted each one and I just said, "Hey, if I'm considering bankruptcy, what would you take if I commit to paying it?" Most of them took 20 to 30%. There were 3 that didn't budge: a dentist, a party apartment I didn't know we were renting, and the Discover card. So the step 3 is negotiate the debt. Maybe it helps, maybe you're stuck. Step 4 is to define debt. There's 3 types of debt. The first one that most people think is all debt. The first thing is bad debt, and that is consumer debt. Credit cards, if you buy more car than you need, your car payment, right? Things that cost you money that maybe you don't need to live. Good debt, which a lot of people say don't exist, Dave Ramsey fans, I understand, is money that makes you more than it costs that somebody else pays off. So that's my criteria for good debt. And then the third one is worse debt. So this is bad debt, right? Costs you money. Maybe it's something you don't need to live, but it has something like a high interest rate, 6, 7 or higher percent, 22% with a credit card, or has an adjustable rate loan or a balloon payment or something that could blow up in your future. I want you to think about, when you have bad debt, which debt is the worst and which debt is just bad debt. Step 5 is to create disposable income. Right? You have some expenses that never change. How much does it cost you to live your life? Your expense for housing, food, transportation, all of those things, healthcare, that you have to pay, and your minimum payments on bad debt. What would be your minimum payments on your bad debt? Make sure you're covering those. Everything above that is what people think is their play money. This is their vacation money, their PS5 money, their next video game money, their dating money. This disposable income for a few years, 3 to 6 years, maybe a little longer depending on your debt. Hopefully you have less than I did. But focus your disposable income. I split it into 2 categories. two categories. No, rented boat. The first one is you got to tackle the worst debt. So you're already covering the cost of life and you're covering your minimum payments, but you got to cover the worst debt. So I took half towards anything with a really high interest rate or anything that could have an adjustable rate or blow up in my face in the future. The other half, I started saving towards assets that will increase my income. So this could be dividend stocks. This could be one of those creative ways you use crypto to make money that I don't understand and don't do. But I decided to buy real estate to create rental income. My first purchase, it took me 2 years to save, 2 years of increasing that disposable income by growing my income, having a side hustle playing World of Warcraft and selling things online, working overtime, climbing the corporate ladder, doing everything it took to make more money and be very frugal, not spending money, to increase that disposable income, half towards worse debt, half towards saving for the first duplex. Most people buy houses. I bought a duplex, live in one side, rent out the other. This let me lower my housing cost by $1,200 a month, which really increased that disposable income. It was another 2 years before I got another duplex. So in 4 years, I did two things. It's really hard to start. It's really slow, but it takes a lot of focus and discipline to understand the really simple concepts of don't create more bad debt, figure out what is your worst debt, and save for growing your good debt. The trick for me to invest while in bad debt was to know I wasn't creating more, to have a plan to take care of the debt that I did have, and you have to put these together, be growing my portfolio at the same time. There's very few situations where I think somebody should take all of their disposable income and just tackle their bad debt. Because good debt, well, you might be able to say bad debt has this car loan has a 4% interest rate. So if I pay it off, I'm getting a 4% return. And if I buy a rental, I'm only going to get a 4% return. So the car's better. The new rental adds a new depreciation schedule. It adds levered appreciation, levered depreciation, and all kinds of benefits that help you gain like a background in rental ownership so that when you go to get a loan for the next property, the banks can look at your history of getting rental income on your tax returns. So instead of just thinking, I've got to kill all of this debt, what can you do to get rid of the worst debt, add the good debt? Because for me, it comes down to ABG. Always be growing. Grow your income, grow your good debt, grow your freedom. This is a nice short live stream on my phone where I will check out all of the comments afterwards, after I get out of the water. If you want your questions answered during a live stream, every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do a live stream that lasts as long as the questions do. And I do not use WhatsApp. I will never ask you to invest in crypto with me. And I have not made a workbook to go along with my book, Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person, which you can find on Amazon, along with dozens of scam books on how to do the workbook for my book that people are using AI to create to rip you off of your money and probably ruin your future. Have a day full of amazing. Bye. Ciao.